All right, thank you for interacting with us. We're going to now just continue with another interview. As we celebrate Heritage Month, we also celebrate the African New Year, which coincides with the Spring Equinox happening between the 22nd and the 23rd of September. So as we know that various New Year celebrations the world over are linked to lunar cycles or astronomical phenomenon occurring. And for the African New Year, the beginning of the year was marked by the heliacal rising of Sirius star dawn, marking that Spring Equinox. So Inzalo, yeLanga, it's one of the most ancient solar stone calendars in the world. It continues to track and tell us how and when we should harvest, relate in society, and also just us in relation to the solar system and environment at large. It's also the site where uBaba Credo Mutwa was initiated at the age of 16. This was back in 1937. So uMkhulu Nsingiza is a Kemet historian, a student of Credo Mutwa, Afrikan Philosophy, also co-founder of the Kemet Afrikan Royal calendar, joins us this morning from the ancient site to chat a little bit more. Thokoza uMkhulu, and thank you for your time on the SABC at this hour.
Thokoza
uMkhulu, perhaps you could speak to the importance of heritage at this point in honoring parts of ancient knowledge and indigenous knowledge systems, particularly this Heritage Month, as we also aging closer to that Spring Equinox phenomenon.
Yes, Ndlovukazi, you know, the Heritage Month is now given content. Why? Because this is the foundation of African heritage. For us to be able, you know, to live the calendar, because we are guided, you know, by the position of the sun and earth, you know, which determines, you know, what season are we in. So we are in this season where we begin a new year, you know, a new cycle on the southern hemisphere, which will then usher in the new year tomorrow. You know, the African New Year's Day is tomorrow on the 23rd. So that is part of, you know, heritage. It has been a concern, you know, for us that heritage, you know, has been hijacked by the concept, you know, of a bright day. And we think that, you know, the lack of content so that we teach about African, you know, indigenous African heritage now is the opportunity for us to re-educate our youth and the young ones about the importance of the African, you know, New Year and the African calendar in general, because a lot of people didn't think that we as African people, we do have a calendar. And we are the people who introduced the calendar in the world. We are at a place called Inzalo, yeLanga, where we find the oldest stone calendar in the world. You know, this is, you know, our heritage here in Mpumalanga. You know, we are here to do a night vigil so that we await the birth of the sun in the morning, you know, tomorrow. We share that a new cycle on the southern hemisphere we call the African New Year.
No, thank you for those opening remarks, because it's important to understand our history, where we come from, to understand where we're going. And I even want to speak about the site itself, the Barberton Makonja Mountains as well, which has become a national heritage site. And it's also one of the world's oldest geological structures. Talk to us about what it represents for us as humanity and Africans as well.
Yes, it involves, you know, that period we call Zeptepi, the beginning, you know, because UNESCO has done a study about these Barberton Mountains. You know, when they were doing their scientific research, they discovered what is called the Black Rock, you know, within, you know, this mountain formation. The Black Rock, according to the study that was done by UNESCO, it produced the first bacteria that, you know, created all living organisms. So life itself began here, you know, at this, you know, place where we are. Yes. So that's the importance, you know, of this place. Is the most sacred place, you know, in the world, according to our teacher, Babu Credo. Babu Credo said in yeLanga, where the uMkhulu is the most sacred place in the world. So this place, for African people, we regard it as an African Mecca. You know, this is where in the near future, we will assemble all Africans, united throughout the whole world to come and celebrate, our New Year, just like the Chinese do when it's their New Year, the Jewish people as well as the Muslim people.
Yes.
This has been the link, on the African continent.
uMkhulu, as well as the honoring the day itself, the traditions carried out. You mentioned that you are at the sacred site. It's the same site where uBaba Credo Mutwa, in fact, was initiated back in 1937. So perhaps you could speak to the traditions that are carried out or affiliated to honor the day. How are you going to welcome the first rays?
Let me just talk about, the site. This is the site, that was established a long time ago. uBaba Credo was initiated here. This site is not just a site, but is an energy vortex. This is where we experience the 0 point, whereby the male and female energy meet. It's along, what is called the Golden Meridian, which starts in Bluff and go up until it reaches, the Great Pyramid, of Giza. So this place, before we colonized, before it was made a nature reserve, it was known as an initiation place where most of the kings of the continent and the world came here to be initiated. I think uBaba Credo was just following, that, a long-standing, understanding about this site, its importance. So
Yes.
this is why Africans have to learn, about their heritage, because South Africa, it just holds so much. There are so many sacred sites which were established a long time ago, and these are, a subject that must be included in our education system, because a lot of people were confused about the origins of life itself. But through our heritage, we can then point and say, this is the place where all living, organism, started. And the Makonjwa Mountain, according to the UNESCO report, it says all mountains in the world separated from these Makonjwa mountains. So
Yes.
this place in Mpumalanga holds a very special place, in the hearts of African people in general.
Absolutely, and it's important to have these stories told for our own agency at large. And just very quickly, because we need to wrap up now, honoring uBaba Credo Mutwa at large. He held so many titles for us. Being a philosopher, a healer, a teacher, a scientist as well. How are you going to pay homage to him, particularly as a student? And what else can we expect for the rest of these celebrations for African New Year?
Yes, before we start anything, the celebration, we have to go and pay homage, along those, old ancient stones, because this is where in the African context, we say this is where they created umsamo, along, these rocks. And every time we come here, before we start the night vigil, we always come and pay respect first and inform him that whatever you taught us, we are now living it, because we are here to make sure that your teachings, don't, just go in vain.
Yes.
Ensure that we make his name, eternal. He lives forever through us.
Oh, absolutely. And thank you for joining us. Enjoy the celebrations. Thank you for also being part of the custodian for our heritage at large, uMkhulu Nsingiza, Kemet historian, student of Credo Mutwa, Afrikan Philosophy, joining us from that ancient site this morning, chatting about Inzalo, yeLanga.